Hello and welcome back to the second half of today's Dateline New Haven on WNHH-FM, New Haven's home for community radio. I'm Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines and the stories that make our community tick. Well, we're going to talk to a son of New Haven. His name is Bob Stefanowski. He grew up right near the Hampton border, but he's still son New Haven because he was right one of those streets off Dixwell. Which street was it again?
We're on Dixwell and Pond Street.
Pond Street. Right? Pond's the last one, right?
Well,
or Elizabeth.
It's up further by the church there.
Yeah.
St. John the Baptist Church.
So Bob Stefanowski is running for governor for a second time as a Republican. He has a rematch against Ned Lamont, who is now the incumbent Democratic mayor, making it for a very different race this year. And as we all know, the world's changed the last 4 years. So he's come on Dateline to give us an update on his campaign. So it's nice to see you, Bob Stefanowski. How you doing?
Good to see you again, Paul. Doing great.
Great. And so are you wiped out? You running around state day and night? Or
it's still early. Got another 4 months to go, but we've gotten a very good reaction. My wife Amy and I never really stopped. We kept getting out there. We weren't sure we were going to run for governor or not, but we stayed active in the community, spent a lot of time in the cities, and we're looking forward to a good, healthy debate through the summer. I think we're in a situation where the views of Democrats are pretty different than the views of Republicans, and I think if we point out that contrast, we're going to be well suited.
Well, the independents are the big prize, right? That's the largest voting bloc in the state.
But when you look at what's on people's minds, giving parents the right to raise their kids, getting government out of the way, you look at inflation, gas prices, it's hard to argue. You think about it, Paul, we've got a Democratic president, Democratic Congress, Democratic Senate, Democratic governor in Connecticut, Democratic ticket, Democratic House, and Democratic State Senate. And look at where the economy is. Now, you can try to blame it on someone else, but when you hold basically every seat of power, you got to live with your record. And I don't think the record has been that good.
It's interesting because when you ran in 2018, the president was Trump, wildly unpopular in Connecticut. 2018 was the first time people who were upset with Trump got to vote against somebody. They voted against you. Now you're running against the Democratic incumbent at a time when there's a Democratic president who's highly unpopular. And I notice people, and you're not the only governor candidate, talk about the Biden / in this case, Biden, Lamont, inflation and gas prices. Is that fair?
I think it is, Paul. When you look at what causes inflation, it's one of the things that causes inflation is excessive government spending. And you look at the budget of the state of Connecticut when Governor Lamont came in versus the last budget he passed, he's spending over $1,000 more per person in the state of Connecticut. We got $6 billion of COVID money from the federal government, which is our tax dollars as well. I think the spending is out of control in Connecticut, and that absolutely contributes to inflation.
And people on all sides of the political divide agree that it wasn't for necessarily bad motives, that the last round of stimulus did fuel inflation. It was what Larry Summers was warning about, that there was needs they were meeting with that spending, but they said that's going to cause the economy to heat up. How much is the state level? Because what Lamont would say is that the governor would say that Wall Street's happy with him, that because we have a surplus with all that federal money that came in, we have a surplus, so the books are balanced, the taxes have gone down. So what's the issue with his management? You think it's still fueling inflation?
Well, a couple corrections. Well, not corrections, but points I'd make. Taxes are not down since he came into office. Governor Lamont raised taxes by $1.8 billion, and he recently cut them by $0.6
because
billion.
He canceled tax increases that were in the works.
Part of it was canceled. Part of it was a food tax. Part of it was a tax on plastic bags. Part of it was a tax on DVD downloads. I mean, he increased taxes close to $2 billion. Doesn't like to talk about that in a campaign year for obvious reasons. And then he cut them by 6. So net, he's a tax increaser. I also think that I forgot the second half of your question, actually. But
I was saying that Wall Street's happy. Our bond rating's gone up.
Well, listen,
they're saying you're managing the state well.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost laughable. If somebody gave you $6 billion that you didn't expect was coming, you think you could balance your budget and keep taxes?
I think I could barely get there, but yeah.
I mean, I get it. He's in the office. He got a break. But please don't run around saying that you're a big tax cutter, especially when you're about to raise the taxes on diesel gas on July 1st. I mean, I don't know, Paul. When I go out there, sometimes people tell you what you want to hear, but I don't think the majority of people in Connecticut truly believe Ned Lamont's campaign commercial that he's a tax cutter, because he's not.
We're talking to Bob Stefanowski. He's running for governor for a second time, rematch with Ned Lamont in a much changed world 4 years later. You're right that you were around. You were visible since you last ran. One thing you did is you and your wife were giving out a lot of masks in New Haven during the COVID pandemic's first year. And at the time, you said to me, there's a time to criticize and there's time to not. I'm not agreeing with everything the governor's doing right now in the pandemic, but I'm going to wait and hold my fire. And then the subject came out recently after the Uvalde massacre when there was a political event about guns. And, you got me thinking, and I haven't answered this question in my mind, that, of course, when you're running for office, when something's important and happens, you want to talk about the issues that are involved. And, of course, there's a way of doing that, and there's a way that's inflaming passions in an unfair way. So you had argued that it was unfair for Democrats to kind of seize on this gun tragedy to run on gun control right at the moment. And I don't have an answer to this, Bob. When do you think is the right time and the right way to talk about how important things happening in the country relate to hot-button issues?
On that specific instance, first of all, as you know, Paul, in politics, everything is fair game. And to have a dialogue about, national tragedies and gun control and Second Amendment is perfectly legitimate. My issue was the tragedy had just happened, less than 24 hours. And to me, it's about leadership instincts, right? So a tragedy like that happened. If you're the head of Connecticut, the first thing you should be thinking about is, are our schools safe? How do we prevent a repeat incident from happening? And you should be obsessed with that, at least for a week. Within 24 hours, out of the Lamont campaign, a attack ad came up on me, taking a clip of me from 4 years ago. Now, I don't know if Governor Lamont was behind it or not. I assume he is because he's the head of the campaign. But to not be focused on the people of Connecticut and immediately try to turn a tragedy like that into a political win, less than 24 hours that it happened, I think it's very poor taste. I really do.
Okay, Tim Withington, I apologize for getting your name wrong. I asked the question. So we know the election was fair and there was no fraud. Why did you not ask Trump to stop anti-democratic claims? If you can't defend democracy from Trump, how are women expected to defend abortion rights here in Connecticut? So we've got a couple issues here. And we said at the beginning of the show, Bob, Republicans nationwide are talking about inflation and gas prices. They say those are the issues that are mattering most to Americans. And you're talking about the other issues when raised, but you're saying this is what we want to talk about. And in fairness, those are the issues you're strongest on in these campaigns. The Democrats are hoping the conversation is about abortions and guns because of polls that show people agreeing more with the Democratic positions. You just saw through that question how the Democrats are trying to frame it, right? Well, so, what's your response then about January 6th hearings and abortion?
So
and
I think if you're running for a state race, right, which I am, we're fortunate to have, in my view, the right laws around both abortion and gun control. So the Democrats are going to want to fearmonger for the next 4 months because they don't want to talk about inflation. I've came out and I believe that we should enforce the laws with respect to Second Amendment that are on the book, toughest in the nation. I've said I'm going to enforce them. With respect to abortion, I've come out and said I'll support that law. The one difference I do have with Governor Lamont is I think parents should have the right to be involved when their child is going through a decision like that. Governor Lamont doesn't think that a 14-year-old girl who's going through a tough decision like that has any reason to talk to her parents about it, that the parents have
Well, I guess what the other side says is, and I think abortion's a very complicated issue.
It is.
And I have great respect for both sides of this issue.
It's a tough one.
14-year-old who's raped by a stepfather.
Rape or incest, there should be an exception.
In terms of parental notification.
Yes.
Okay.
Absent that, I think a parent should have the right to know that their girl under the age of 16 is entitled to do it, is having that discussion and have some input to it.
Harry Joyce, our station manager, Donald Trump's biggest fan in New Haven, points out that no one stopped Hillary Clinton from claiming that the 2016 election was stolen or stopped the Democrats from running their fake investigation. He calls it fake investigation.
I don't want to get into a debate as to who did what. Joe Biden won the election. He's the president. Let's move on. There's a bunch of hearings as to what happened on that day. If Trump is implicated, he should be held accountable. I'm running for governor of Connecticut. This is exactly what the Democrats want to do. They don't want to talk about the fact that Ned Lamont's raising the taxes on gas in 2 days. And we're going to hold them accountable.
So let's talk about that. So the way that the Republicans have phrased it is that the tax cuts aren't enough. They sunset after the election. And the way the Democrats frame it is it's irresponsible to cut too much and cut into rainy day funds, and that they're not raising. On Friday, diesel taxes go back up. they're saying that they're letting expire a short-term cut. So they're not raising the taxes, but they're not keeping going a tax cut that was temporary. Is that a fair way to put it?
It's a weak argument at best. Governor Lamont runs the state. He could have called a special session. He's got a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate. He could have stopped the diesel tax from going up. It's as simple as that. It was totally within his power. And by the way, he's got $3.5 billion of our money that could have well funded to do it. For whatever reason, he decided.
But isn't
not
it good
to
to keep? I mean, the rainy day fund had been underfunded in the past. Isn't it good when we get a bounty to put some aside to pay down pensions? And
I'm all for saving money, Paul, but it's raining in Connecticut
It's raining.
right now. I mean, I was in New Haven a couple weeks ago meeting with some people, and I don't think it's that different in the suburbs and other cities. People are making choices between whether to buy gas, food, or prescription medicine. And I think it's unconscionable that we're sitting at a $3.5 billion surplus up there, and rumor has it there's going to be another $3 billion surplus coming out of this budget to give people relief.
you know,
I
it's
mean,
interesting.
think about it, Paul. Just step
in our
back.
youth, Bob, it was the Republicans, different kind of Republican Party, who said put more away for a rainy day, and the Democrats who said let's spend it because it's raining.
Well, it's certainly raining now, Paul. I mean, you know, I saw a thing from CNBC that this is nationally, not Connecticut, 53% of the people are living paycheck to paycheck. That's what they came out with today. I mean, that's inflation at 40-year highs, gas prices that we've never even seen before, shortages of food. It's bad. And we have the ability to do something to make it easier for Connecticut residents. We need to do it.
Julia Gambale says, I'd rather pay more at the gas pump and store and be treated like a full person. Harry says, I agree with the hopefully next governor. And now we're talking to Bob Stefanowski running to be the next governor. He's a Republican candidate. He's got the party nomination. And we're talking WNHH's Dateline, New Haven. You know, one thing that was very interesting to me, the way you and Ned Lamont are doing your commercials and your framing. And tell me if I'm right about this. Given that independents are the largest block of voters in the state, yes, you want everyone's vote. You want your Republican loyalists. You want your Democrats who are disaffected.
Right.
But given that they're by far the largest party by hundreds of thousands, it sounds to me like both of you are trying to claim the moderate mantle and describe the others the extremists. So on abortion, you said, you know, he's taking extreme position by not letting a 14-year-old, by requiring a 14-year-old consult with the parents too about abortion unless it's rape or incest. That was an important exception. And he'll say, Bob's part of a Republican Party, that a lot of the independents in Connecticut feel the National Republican Party's gone off the rails. That's not who Themis Clarities is, but, you know, or Len Fasano, but that is the view of the middle. So I think he's appealing to that, trying to tie you to pretty extreme stuff that we're seeing from Republicans who might be under indictment soon. And it seems to me you're trying to pin him to Democrats who are seen as extreme on issues like no restrictions on abortion or no restrictions, extreme gun control. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, well, part of it, perhaps. I think I've been pretty fair to Governor Lamont, right? I haven't tried to peg him for late-term abortion. He said he supports the law that's on the Connecticut books, which is the way it is. All I've pointed out is the fact that he doesn't support that parents should have any involvement in their kids making a tough decision. That's factual. That's not a Democrat, Republican, then that's factual. With respect to me, one of the things I didn't do well last time is I allowed him to define me. And this time we're going to define ourselves, and we're going to talk about what's on our mind. I can't control what happens in Washington, right? I can't control what happens within the Republican Party. What I can control is to show people that I'm a real person who grew up on Dixwell Avenue in New Haven, that's had to struggle to make a rent payment, that has some empathy for what people are going through, and has a tangible plan to fix it. And if we get that message out there, Paul, we're going to win by a big margin.
Bob, tell me about a moment on the campaign trail that sticks in your mind, either because it tells you something about the state of play in Connecticut right now, how people are living, or what this campaign's about why you're running.
You know, probably the most frequent comment I hear from people on fixed income, which is, I don't want to leave Connecticut. You know, my kids are here, my friends are here, but I'm now on a fixed income and property taxes are going up and the cost to live has gone up $650 a month based on inflation. And it hates me to say this, Bob, but if you don't win in November, I'm moving down to North Carolina. And
That's a lot on your shoulders.
I'm not making it up, Paul. I've probably heard it 20 times. And maybe they're telling me what I want to hear. I get it. But That's a lot of
or maybe they're saying
responsibility.
something they believe when they say it. And
People
may or may
are
not happen.
hanging on. They're trying to hang on for some sanity. And I think we can bring it. I think, we can start to make it less expensive to live here. We came up with a 6-point plan last week on things that Governor Lamont could do right now.
What are the 6?
Cut the sales tax, right? In an inflation environment and a fixed 6.35%, lower that to 5.99%. Give some people some discipline. Get rid of the diesel tax. Not only don't raise it, get rid of it. It's going from 43 to 49 cents. He's raising it. Get rid of the whole 43 cents, because the problem is if you're taxing the trucks, they're not going to eat that cost. They're going to pass it down to the price of goods and services. You talk about inflation, that's inflationary.
So,
it's
Bob,
an area
as you
where
know,
Governor Lamont is being inflationary.
When President Biden suggested having a holiday on the gas tax, there was a consensus among economists that it actually wouldn't have the impact he's saying, that it was a phony move because, in fact, the prices can go up because demand would increase. If more people drive because gas costs less, we've seen the way prices being set now is by supply and demand, so that would go back up. And in fact, we've had this gas tax holiday in New Haven, in Connecticut, where only under 60% of the benefit of the gas tax cut has gone to the consumer at the pump. Now, maybe that's okay. Maybe that's enough. But what do you say to the people who say that both parties are engaged in campaign gimmickry? Although I don't doubt that you believe it, but that in fact, when you do these tax cuts at the pump, they don't have the purpose. It's just a good way of showing you care for much tougher problems.
Well, first of all, they do have an impact. Is it 100% or 80%? I don't
60,
know.
they said, yeah.
Second of all, we're going into the 4th of July weekend, right? I'm hearing stories about people canceling vacations because they can't afford to drive to Maine. We're sitting on a $3.5+ billion budget surplus. Would it really be the end of the world of the state of Connecticut to suspend, and he's only suspended one of the taxes on regular gas, suspend the other one, suspend the diesel tax, lower the sales tax, and start to give some people some relief so they can enjoy their summer and be able to afford food? If we had a $3.5 billion deficit, maybe not, Paul, but you look at the way this governor, he just handed out $6 billion all across the state. I don't know where the money went. We should have an accountability of that. But you have people really struggling right now. I don't know how he wakes up in the morning and says, I've got the ability to help them, but I decided not to do it. It makes no sense to me.
Bob Stefanowski, before I let you go, I promised I wanted to bring up the big event happening in New Haven today. For last week, New Haven's been focused, and now the nation is focused as of this morning, on an incident that took place here. I don't expect you to know what happened. It's being investigated by the state. A man was arrested on a weapons charge. He was peacefully arrested. He's put in a van that had no seatbelts, and the driver slammed on the brakes when he thought a car was coming to an intersection, which it wasn't. And the guy's head crammed against the wall. He couldn't move. He told them he couldn't move, but instead of waiting for an ambulance, they brought him to detention, dragged him on the floor, made him stand up, didn't believe him, and now he's paralyzed in the hospital after 2 surgeries on a breathing tube. Ben Crump, the attorney for George Floyd, among others, now is in town. He's part of the team representing the family. He had a press conference in New Haven an hour ago where he said, New Haven, this is going to be a hashtag. This is going to be part of the national conversation that we need to have black people treated better by police. New Haven has now put seatbelts in the vans. They've suspended the 4 administrative leave. They put the 5 officers involved, and they promised a review of how their policies are. Any thoughts? I don't expect you to know specifics, but any thoughts about this discussion?
First of all, it's a very sad story. You hate to see that happen. I think we have to wait till the facts come out. It doesn't look good on the surface. I believe the officers were put on suspension.
Yeah, administrative leave.
And if it's been proven that they did something wrong, we got to hold them accountable. I think the majority of police officers do the right thing. We'll see where the facts are in this one, the vast majority of police officers. But if it's part of that 1% that did something wrong, we have to hold them accountable.
And it's interesting, for most of the officers involved, it's not even that discussion about bad apples or good apples. It's how does someone do their job on a particular day? So some of these records, like one officer has a problematic record. She was suspended after someone died in custody there because of not following procedures. But some of the others are known as good cops who, for whatever reason, didn't follow their training. And it's just kind of interesting how you get systems to work. You talk about wanting to govern. Yeah. That's a lot of people to manage, make sure that people are retrained all the time, their procedures are followed. I want to give you a moment just to talk about that, Bob Stefanowski. What is it that you're looking forward to about governing this big state at a time when there are big challenges? And how would you go about governing in a way that's different?
It's a big challenge. I'm sure it's tougher than I imagine. What I am looking to do, or looking
close to the mic a little bit.
What I am looking forward to doing is leadership. I don't think we've got the right leadership right now. I don't think we send the right signals. There was and I know it was kind of a half joke, but a music video that came out a week ago from the governor's office that it was a country western sing and say that the reason you should come to Connecticut is because we've legalized gambling and it's cool to smoke pot. I get it, Paul, but I'm a little bit more disciplined than that.
I've not smelled this much marijuana just walking around town. I think since I was in a college dorm in 1980.
You know, it's fine to joke, but do we really want to be telling kids it's cool to, to do drugs? Do we really want to be having people drink up at the Capitol and testify under the influence? Do we really want the mayor of West Haven to get away with having 90% of her COVID funds being taken away when she's a CPA? I think people are...
CPA.
She is, yeah. I think people are looking for common sense. Do we really want to raise gas taxes when gas is at historical highs? So a lot of it's hard, Paul, but a lot of it is leadership, bringing some common sense, putting people first, having some empathy for what they're going through, because people are going through tough times right now, and making some changes to make people feel like you've got their back. And that's the way I've led my corporate career, and that's the way we're going to lead the state of Connecticut, because we're going to win this thing, Paul.
I had some other questions, but I got to admit that's kind of an ending, so I'm going to let you go.
Okay.
Bob Stefanowski, thanks for coming by.
Thanks for having me on anytime.
Always a pleasure to see you.
Good to see you.
Good luck engaging in the great American tradition of electoral politics and bringing issues to people and debating. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. I want to thank Harry Dross, our station manager behind the controls. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us every day and every night. WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.